All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Joseph Huckleberry Teskey. We've got a panel that we brought together to talk about veterans and post traumatic stress disorder. We'll get into that PTSD stigma later on. But the mission of this panel is to discuss mental health and as it pertains to veterans and the parallels to non-veterans. So we're not just going to be talking about just veterans, but with Veterans Day coming up, we wanted to make sure that we made that more of the topic, more than a byproduct. Um, we're going to talk about what we've been through, how we've overcome it, and how it affects our families and loved ones. So joining us today, we have Josh Kemp, a two-tour combat veteran. We have Todd Box, the bipolar destroyer, as I like to call him. But then we also have Bethany Kemp, who is Josh's wife. We have Lorraine Doss, Hamilton, and Lorraine is the spouse of a combat veteran. And then we have John Goins, a combat veteran. Myself, I'm a combat veteran and a graduate of the Tim Scher One Belief Away Academy through the Indie Hypnosis Group here in Indianapolis. So we'll probably be talking a little bit about that stuff too. So welcome everybody. Glad to have everybody here. Josh, let's start with you. Why don't you give us a brief background and tell us why you're here?
First up, right? Okay. So February 2001, I signed my initial contract. I was supposed to go to basic training September 11th or September 12th, and then September 11th happened, grounded everything, changed the whole scheme of things. I was then bused down to Fort Benning, Georgia after that. And fast forward a little bit, 2003, I find myself in Iraq for the first time. It was like the Wild West back then. It was very open. There was a lot of fighting going on. And, we did push up into the country really fast. We lost two guys during that deployment. And it really started to strike home whenever we got back. Because whenever we got back, the dust settled, the adrenaline wore off, and guys started succumbing to their own demons. And we started, sorry, but you start seeing and going to the funeral homes and seeing these guys who, just serve so heroically and then not be able to handle it here back home when they're safe. Fast forward a little bit farther, 2008, I get my number called again to head back over into Iraq. And it was a lot different scene than what it was in 2003 when I was there originally. At this point in time, we were doing truck operations, convoy patrols, got really good at finding IEDs before they found me. But then I did get blown up in 2008. I am not a little guy. I found myself pushed down into the floorboard of the truck. My head was ringing. Luckily, we all made it out of there alive. Since I was an NCO at that time, I had the option to deny medical assistance afterwards, as far as like concussion protocols and what the military goes through. I forced my two guys to go through that program, and I immediately went back out on mission. Within that 30-day process of those guys, I also was responsible for finding 4 more IEDs in that time frame. So I look back on it, and some of the things I deal with nowadays, I should have went through there. But the fact of the matter is if I didn't, like, things could have been a lot different for these guys who are taking over my role, taking over my place there. And the story is the same. After we got back from this deployment, we made it through with everybody. We came home 100%. And then within the first 6 months, we already had 6 people take their lives, and it just started going back over again and again. And these guys who were not able to readjust back into safety and got stuck in their own head. And then, I keep moving forward. Everything's fine. No, never, none. But that all bled right into my family life, how I was behaving at home. And, when your kids are looking at you like, what did I do wrong? That dad is so mad. And, trying to explain to them that it's not got anything to do with them. And it's in my head. I can't take back that time. But, moving forward with how we're growing is, sharing this healing and being open and vulnerable, with our healing, which then allows other people to know that it's okay. And I'm here to say that it takes a real man, a real tough guy or woman to admit that they need some help and then to actually get it. So anybody watching this, like, there is help there. You're not alone. And everybody on this panel can attest to the exact same thing. I spent my time not sleeping, fighting in my sleep, upset, sweating, like it was all kinds of discomfort and all kinds of just not living life. And, this amazing woman right here stick by me, and she, has been helping guide. And because of her, like, I'm here today to let veterans know that, like, there is a better way and there is a better path, and it is good. Like, life is good when you start moving forward intentionally. So with the help of Joe and the rest of you guys here on the panel, bringing awareness that, there doesn't have to be 22 veterans who commit suicide every day. You don't have to go to these funerals and wonder why, and if we could have done more, because that's what we're doing right now. We're doing more, and we're bringing awareness to this with all of our stories and our efforts of what we're doing. Would you like to say anything on that?
Yes, please, Bethany, please do.
Well, I'm here because I love him. Josh definitely lived a long time in denial. Going to the grocery store, and he wouldn't be able to get out and go in the store. He would get to the door and turn around and go back to the car. We couldn't go to Sam's Club. We couldn't go to the mall for school clothes shopping. I was doing that on my own with 4 kids. And so, when we'd go out to eat, the kids, they just know that dad is going to sit in the seat facing the door. Like, don't even try to sit there. So, to see how far he has come over the last 2 or 3 years, especially, but, the whole long road, since he came home in 2009, I mean, it has been a long road. Yeah. And, there were a lot of years of him just not being willing to accept that what he was experiencing was post-traumatic stress and, symptoms of his experiences. And so, he's been through years and years of talk therapy with the VA, getting boxes of medication delivered to the house for this and that. And, we finally just really ventured down the path of natural healing. And that has just continued to evolve, and one door opens and leads us to another door, and we just continue to learn and grow and get better and better. And just being able to see his transformation, for me, it is so powerful that we just want to share that with other people, because I know where he came from and I see where he is today. And so I know that he can just be a beacon and a light for others to show people that, if he can come through this, they can too. And they can do it just with the power of their own minds and what's already within them. You don't need a medication. You don't need, there's always a place for medicine. Don't get me wrong. So, if you have a situation where you need medicine, that's totally fine. But I think that we can all accept that there's an epidemic of overprescribing medication from the VA. And so, I got tired of seeing boxes of pills show up at the house and just take a pill for this and another pill for this and another pill for this. So the natural path has really it's been so empowering, because understanding, that you do have the power within, and, once you go within, you'll never go without.
That's right.
And so, yeah, that's our story. I'm here because I have seen the full 180, and I know the power that what he's doing is going to have on so many other people. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Bethany. I really appreciate you being here and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
Todd Box.
Yes, hello.
Why don't you give us your background and tell us why you're here?
Yeah, sure. First of all, Josh, Bethany, thank you guys for sharing. Bethany, I really liked that one of the last things you just said there. Once you go within, you never go without. I've never heard that before. And I mean, I got my little notepad here. I write everything down that went right in my notepad. That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Awesome.
Aside from that, I'll just be pretty blunt with you guys. I'm just a little bit burnt out today, so I'm going to pull up my notes. I might be jumping around just a little bit. But as Joe mentioned, my name's Todd Box. If you know me from the MMA world, I go by the Bipolar Beast. But I'm an MMA fighter, mental health advocate, small business owner. The majority of my life, looking back, obviously there's been many signs that I've had some issues, but the main battle began right around 2018. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and I've also battled addiction, both drugs and alcohol, since 2008. And tonight I'm here to hopefully help, you guys and everybody else who's paying attention here understand what either they're going through or what their loved ones are going through. So as I mentioned, looking back, there were many instances in my life that were blatantly obvious now that there were some issues. But a lot of it was just seen as me being weird or overly hyper or even dismissed, with cliches such as boys will be boys or, whatever that may be, whatever cliche you may have heard. None of the issues were truly addressed to find the root of the behaviors. And as I began through junior high and high school, some of the behaviors escalated. I began experimenting more with drugs, alcohol, girls, some of the regular stuff, nobody really batted an eye at it. Even though I did have positive role models, I did have positive influences at home, and still I kind of drifted towards all these negative things that I knew I wasn't supposed to do. And knowing what I know now, I was obviously just burying my pain and just kind of cope with whatever I was feeling at the time, undiagnosed and uneducated. And I was just burying all of that stuff with whatever I could find. After the first few times of trying some of the stuff, especially drinking and some of the recreational drugs, it was over with. Even though I knew it wasn't right, it took away the pain that I was experiencing, and it was just a relief from all the daily struggles in the head. And that's how I got hooked. It really wasn't even the feeling of, oh, I'm high, this feels great. It was the feeling of I don't have this, excuse me, sorry. Just a relief of not having that darkness or that heaviness. It wasn't even about the feeling that I get from the drug. It was the lack of feeling what I was feeling every day when in that darkness. So yeah, that was quite a ride for quite a while. Again, the root of any of those issues were never really addressed. It was just seen as typical teenage behavior. It's just experimental phase, whatever. He'll get through it, and obviously that turned out not to be the case. I continued along a pretty ugly path for a while, fracturing many relationships with, a lot of my friends, many girlfriends, family members, even my own mom. Things got a little dark. Gosh, I'm sorry, guys. I'm just burnt out today, so I'm going to try to push through and struggle through as much of this as I can. I'll probably break down a few times, and I apologize. Right around 2011, 2012, things got pretty rough for me. A really close role model at that time passed away. I had a wrestling scholarship that I had lost at that time. Got kicked off the team, lacking in school, just all the bullshit that came along with all the partying and the drugs. At that point, I thought I had enough. I was overwhelmed. And in 2012, alone in my dorm room, I made the first attempt at taking my own life. And if it wasn't for my roommate and a couple of friends coming in to find me and getting me to go, get everything pumped out of my system, I wouldn't have made it through that night. I would have been successful in that attempt. After that point, I dropped out of college, came back home. Things were okay for a minute. I had a little bit of support. Obviously, after that scenario, I had a little bit more support and, some people helping me get through some stuff for a little bit. Things were going okay. After a short amount of time, though, my mom, who I still had a pretty fractured relationship with, was diagnosed with a pretty serious cancer. In between, trying to figure out our relationship and all the mess that I had created, and trying to be super strong and supportive for her at the same time, all while balancing work, trying to get through school, still falling back into drugs and alcohol. It was just, obviously, I was just now, not at that point, but now, obviously, I was just setting myself up for another big fall. After another few weeks of a pretty deep depressive swing, there was another night that crept up on me. I'd been drinking just a little bit too hard, not really sleeping. And I had convinced myself I didn't need to be here any longer. I don't really want to get into too much detail on that one, but by another weird twist of fate, my second attempt at trying to end my life was interrupted. And, I was able to make it through that night and get a little bit of help and come back out of that dark hole. At some point, I can't remember exactly when. There's been so many times people told me I needed help, but there was some point shortly after that. So my family and my girlfriend at the time had convinced me to get some help. I went to maybe one session with the counselor. Never went back after that first try. I did make an effort. I do remember buying a few books. Reading a few books, trying to do a little bit of research of my own, trying to make a few changes for the better, but I never really, went to a doctor or got diagnosed. I did get totally clean and sober for a stretch of a few years. And then maybe right around 2017, 2018, things got pretty heavy for me again. I didn't really feel any purpose. Even though I had a great job, I hated it. I was just extremely depressed. There was just nothing to be for me personally. There was nothing to be happy about at that moment. I couldn't find any kind of light at that point. I had relapsed again, fell out of sobriety. I started hitting the bottle and using recreational drugs again. My fiance at the time convinced me to seriously get some help this time, not just, go see a counselor for one session and quit, to seriously go see some help. I'd gone to see a psychiatrist. I started taking medications. I started talking to therapists, support groups, all the stuff that I was supposed to be doing. And after a few weeks of working with that psychiatrist, I was diagnosed with a bipolar disorder and a generalized anxiety disorder. And that itself was kind of a bombshell. I always knew I had some issues with addiction, the drinking and drugs. I knew that was clearly there was an issue there, but it never really crossed my mind that there could be, something else underlying. Or, as I mentioned, the root of the problem that's been overlooked for so many years. So that was a little bit of a bombshell to get over, to get used to. After about a month or so after the diagnosis, I believe, I was in pretty rough shape, learning about those disorders, trying to adjust to the new meds, trying to learn how to cope with all these things, just basically a whole new lifestyle and schedule. Um, just trying to process a lot of information that was getting dumped on me. It was just very overwhelming. My fiance, that relationship at the time became increasingly worse. Eventually things came to a head and we had a huge fight. We split up. I was devastated on top of all those other things I just listed. I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing to get healthier, trying to become a better partner. How could things, at that time, I'm just thinking like, how do things keep getting worse? What's going on? I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Why is this happening to me? Basically kind of being the victim, making myself the victim, which is not the truth. And at that point, again, I had basically just given up hope. All those medications that doctor was throwing at me, I just crushed them all up, put them all together, and ingested all of it. Again, I was just hoping not to wake up. Maybe, I don't really remember. It was pretty foggy. Maybe about 48 hours, maybe 2 or 3 days later, I woke up. It's pretty foggy. Honestly, I don't really know how I woke up. I've never really publicly talked about a lot of this stuff before. I don't really have an explanation for it. Since that third attempt that I woke up, there was just a switch that just kind of, I still struggle. I still have those issues, the suicidal ideations. I struggle with the depression a lot, but something kind of switched. And to me, it's just like, there's a reason that the universe wouldn't allow me to remove myself from the equation. It's just multiple attempts. There always seems to be something that happens or whatever, stuff that I should not have been able to make it through. And yet here I am. So something just kind of switched at that point that made me get my shit together and say, okay, you know what? It's time to stop quitting. And this is what we're going to have to deal with. There's no magic cure. This is what we're dealt. We're going to have to deal with it. So shortly after that incident, I got back on track with my doctors, my meds correctly. I talked to my doctor about reducing some of the medications and totally eradicating some of the medications as well. A couple months later, there was 2 huge things that happened that made a huge change for me. And without a doubt, saved my life. The first thing was going to my first support group with NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness. I met a few very important individuals in that organization who got me through and helped me more than I think they even realize. The second big thing for me was joining the MMA gym. I wrestled all through high school and college, coached a little bit. And after that, I really only lifted and ran a little bit. Nothing anywhere near like it was with the wrestling on my life. But once I got into the MMA gym and started training regularly, it was just like a physical release of all the stress and all the negative thoughts were just like, I don't really know how to explain it, but it's just like the gates were lifted. It just, to this day, I don't know how to explain it. It's just like, I don't know. It's just a total release. And it's not even a process I have to think about. It's just the gates open and all of the crap just oozes out and it's just euphoric. So since I joined that gym and since I started with the groups, those 2 were probably the biggest keys for me. I basically became addicted to training my body instead of addicted to drugs and alcohol. And don't get me wrong, it's been a rocky road and it always will be. But fortunately for me, I've now looking back over the last year, I've got much more of a grasp on my mental health over the last few years, actually made a lot of progress. I've got a great support system between all of my family and friends, all my training partners. I'm open with everything that I deal with, that I struggle with, hoping to influence anybody else who's struggling with these things. Hey, I'm not alone. This guy's going through it too. This big bad MMA fighter is dealing with all these things too. It's normal. It's okay. And for me personally, I've learned to put a couple different coping mechanisms together between my training, of my journaling. There's a few other things that I do, including a few backup plans in case that, I can't quite get to one of those coping mechanisms. Due to those things, I'm more balanced today than I can ever really remember, even all the way back to being a kid. And then on top of that, I switched career paths rather than, as I mentioned before, I had a really good job. I worked with the Ohio Carpenters Union, and many people, would kill to have that kind of a great job and great benefits. But to me, all that money in the bank just didn't matter. I was miserable every day. I woke up totally miserable. And as soon as I'm headed home, I'm thinking about how bad the next day is going to be. I totally switched my career path to focus a little bit more on personal fulfillment and doing stuff I enjoy, which is helping other people. I still train MMA daily. I'm on the verge of becoming a professional athlete, which I'm kind of trying to use that platform to help reach as many people as I can. Kind of like I mentioned earlier, just to let people know and shout from the top of the mountains. It's okay. You can talk about your issues. There's things that we can do to get through this. This isn't the end all be all. Just because it feels like this is, there's no way out of this hole, doesn't mean we need to quit. There's things we can do to get through it. So again, that's kind of why I'm here tonight with Joe. I'm thankful that Joe invited me to help be on here and talk to you guys. And if anybody has any kind of questions, comments, feel free to speak up, let me know. And I think that's pretty much my story. I'll wrap it up and quit rambling for you guys.
Thank you, Todd. That's a lot of that is the first time. This is the first time I've heard a lot of that. So
It's the first time I've talked about it in a while.
I'm extremely appreciative of you bringing that to us tonight.
Yep.
I know it's difficult to talk about, especially when you know that it's going to go hopefully as wide as we all hope it goes. And it takes a lot of cojones, for lack of a better term, during this live event that we're doing with all of us. So I really appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you for sharing, Todd. That's powerful, man. I appreciate that.
It's the only way people are going to know is if we share it and tell everybody.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep. 100% right. And that's why we're here, to tell people what we've been through.
You can come from rock bottom and you can achieve more than you ever thought possible.
Yeah.
It's time to get rid of that stigma.
Exactly.
It's time to get rid of the stigma about mental health.
Absolutely.
Right.
On some of my fight shirts, I literally have "Fight the Stigma" across the back of my fight shirts. That's what my whole mission is about.
Perfect.
Nice.
All right, Lorraine, why don't you tell us your background and tell us why you're here?
Well, I've known my husband Clayton since we were 5 years old. We went to kindergarten together. We played together in our small little town in California. Went through high school together. Never dated, but yeah, I chased him around at church. Like I knew then when I was 7, he was the one. It just took him a whole lot longer to figure it out. So I wasn't around when he did his multiple tours in the military. He left the day after we graduated high school. Found each other on Facebook, social media. Here we are 7 years later. Throughout that time period, I was a single mom raising 2 girls. Thought, okay, that's it. We'll do this. He'd gone through, when we started getting together and talking, he'd gone through several different types of treatment through the VA, put him on medication for nightmares, depression, anxiety, and anything you could think of. It was just like Bethany said, pill after pill after pill. And he knows himself. He's got an addictive personality. So he didn't want to do that. He didn't want to start taking all those pills and become addicted. And some of the therapies he's went through, some of the stuff just worked for a day, worked for a month, never long lasting. But at times, from the wife's standpoint, coming home to, what am I coming home to? What mood am I coming home to? Is it going to be the fun one? Is it going to be the one who's having flashbacks, who's struggling because of an anniversary of one of the guys he lost while he was on tour? You just never know. The middle of the night, arms swinging, the leg kicks, and the standing straight up startles you. Being that single mom, I wanted to fix everything. So it was, okay, let's get help. Let's get help. And nothing worked. The VA takes for a long time, to get in, to just get through the process. And for him to relive what he did and experienced over there, something that I could never fathom, just kept building up and building up in him. I reached out to Joe several months ago. Help. I don't know what to do. From a wife, I just don't know. But I wanted him fixed. It was the fix it, not short term. I wanted the Clayton back that was fun in high school, was fun to date. Not the, I don't want to say mean. He's not mean. The unknown of him is what I wanted. And he's been working with Joe, and I see that help. I see that open up to being honest with me of, hey, this weekend is an anniversary. If I'm off, this is why. Instead of bottling it up. Mama, he said it to me today. Mama, do you know what today is? It was the second battle of Fallujah. It's a hard day. Then I can work with that. I can not mama bear him, but understand where mentally where he's at, knowing he's reliving all of that. Like Bethany and Josh said, going to a restaurant, I stand back and let him choose the seat because it could be in the middle of the open. Which one do you want? What's best for him to at least go out in public? And I'm not the greatest at it, I'll be honest, because I will also avoid places that will trigger him. If it's a big crowd, because he watches hands, okay, you stay over here and I'll go do this. I'll go do the shopping. We'll just have groceries delivered. That way you don't have to go to the grocery store. That's not fair to him, and it's not fair to me, and it's not fair to our families. Working with Joe, I have seen, Mama, what do we need from the grocery store? And anything from dinner tonight, okay, I'll figure it out. And he does. Those are the helps from the spouse that is tremendous. It doesn't stop, like I said, it's only been a couple sessions with Joe, but it doesn't stop what he's been through, because that's something he's experienced. I haven't. But it opens him up to talk about it and not think that he is the only one that has ever seen any of that, experienced any of that, or the only person that has lost some of his guys. For the longest time, that's what he thought. He's starting to realize, I'm not the only one. There's other dudes out there like me. And that is the light bulb that went off. But what has made my heart the happiest, because he's talking about it. It's not the demon inside. He's letting that demon out. So that's where we are, and we work on it. And he's sitting right here next to me, listening to me. And yep, head buried, but yep, you're right. So that's where we are. And I'm just, the stigma, like Todd talked about, needs to be opened up and talked about. It's the only way anything's going to get fixed, is by talking about mental health. It's not a bad thing. Whether it's a kid going through high school, like Todd, middle school, or an adult who has seen some of the worst things ever. Everybody has some little bit of a mental health concept and needs to talk about it to anybody. So that's where I'm at.
Awesome. Well, some very kind words from Lorraine towards myself, and I greatly appreciate it. But also more importantly, talking about what she's been through and what her husband's had to deal with and how they're coping with those. Um, and it's difficult. You know, I'll talk about myself a little bit more later, but I was I was married at one point in time while I was in the service, but she was also a soldier, so we didn't have to worry about not knowing what each other was doing. So to me, you know, I think that the hardest job in the United States military, whether you be with them when they were active duty or overseas, or whether you're with them now, right? That's the hardest one, is being there in either capacity, being the spouse of a military member, whether they're currently serving or if their time is done doing their active service and now they're doing it in other ways. So I commend you. And Bethany, obviously, same thing goes for you. You know how I feel about you anyway. So, but no, thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and go to John.
Thank you for sharing with us, Lorraine.
Yes, thank you,
Yep.
Lorraine.
Thank you,
So
Lorraine.
powerful.
So I guess with me, I had I guess I'm the old guy here actually. Hey, that's kind of cool. So with me, I had the end of my sophomore year was my last year of high school. Um, I I was going to be 25 when I graduated, man. I knew what was coming, and I'd always planned on going into the Army anyway. Um, so I went ahead and joined up. My parents were nice enough to sign me up at 17. And, it was great. I got to basic training, turned 18 there. And, as soon as I graduated basic training,
All right, I think we lost John. Is anybody else able to hear him at all?
No.
Okay. Well, we'll wait for him to come back to us at some point in time. Um, so for myself, um, it took me a long time to admit that I had an issue or multiple issues. Um, I was active duty, Army, spent a couple years in South Korea, and then came back to the States and then went back overseas. Probably about 4 or 5 months later, after being newly married to my wife, who was also getting deployed with me. Um, and so we spent a year overseas. Um, you know, did the soldiering thing. Went out and tried to find the bad guy, and had some individuals that we had to locate, and then did what we had to do with them. Um, Mine didn't really start for me to notice it until I got back from Iraq, and my former wife, decided that at that point in time she didn't want to be with me anymore. And I remember having a realization one day. There was something going on, and I ended up sitting in a closet, um, crying and yelling at the same time. Um, and that's when I realized, you know what, this probably isn't a good thing. Um, so I reached out to some military stuff, had a little conversation to try to do like couples counseling. That wasn't going to happen because she didn't want to be a part of the counseling whatsoever. Um, so then fast forward a bunch of years, and I pretty much just dealt with everything. It was just one of those things where hey, yeah, I went to serve overseas. Yeah, I'm a little jacked up. Yeah, I used to work in a maximum security prison. I've seen some stuff. So yeah, it is what it is. I'm just going to deal with it and keep going and keep going and keep going. But in 2020 for me is kind of whenever it really started to come to a head. And then in 2022 in April, I had a family uh, friend of mine. She's more like a sister to me right now, than anything. But she told me I need to get my act together. And and I was like, "What are you talking about?" And she started laying out all the different symptoms that I was showing, because she is a registered nurse, so she kind of knew what was going on with me. So I reached out to the VA and um, tried to get the help through them in April of 2022, and then fast forward to July, I had an incident that wasn't related to any of the mental health stuff or anything like that. But I had to have some emergency back surgery, and I'm on day 2 of recovery from emergency back surgery, and the VA calls me, and they're like, "Hey, 3 months later, we want to do your assessment for your mental health thing that you wanted help with," and I was just like, "Okay, fine." Well, in between those 2 times, I'd already started talking to Josh. Josh had seen some things on Facebook, nothing huge, nothing major. It was just some things that he thought was like, hey, maybe you can get into what I'm doing as far as let me help you. I can see some of the stuff in you that I'm seeing in myself a little bit. Um, and so we had started talking together. And I tried doing the VA thing, but all they did was rehash my activating event. Because there's whenever you go through the VA stuff, they want to know, hey, this is what your incident was that made you as bad as you are right now. And then every week we just rehash it, and it's just like, look, I don't want to rehash this anymore, because what happens for me is that I would go through, have our session. And then for the next 3 or 4 days, I feel like crap. All right. And, it starts kicking up all the bad memories. And then a couple days later, after that, all right, I'm good, no big deal. And then I have a normal day. And then bam, we're right back to a weekly session. And so I didn't even tell the counselor. I just stopped responding altogether, stopped talking to her. I don't want anything to do with this. Um, and that's whenever um, I really honed back in with Josh. He and I had been talking a little bit during that time frame, but not like a huge amount. Um, but that's when we really reconnected, and that's when I decided that I wanted to to help other people even more than I already wanted to help people. Um, so Josh introduced me to his coach, and now my coach, Tim Scher. Tim ran me through the first 4 sessions of his one belief away method, um, and I left the last session, and I said to myself, I want to be Tim Scher for the rest of my life. Um, well, I want to be like him. I still want to be Joe Teskey, because I mean, who doesn't want to be Joe Teskey? Um, but I wanted to help people. I wanted to see those aha moments in everybody in their heads, whenever their eyes just light up and they're like, "Hey, I can do this. I can be this." Um, that's what I wanted for myself. So this past May, I started my journey of getting certified in with Tim Scher, and I am a certified member of Tim Stable, as well as Josh Kemp. And I can't thank Josh enough for doing what he did, because we worked together at a different job back in 2020. Well, 20, I think it was 18 to like 2020 time frame. But like we weren't buddies. We weren't like best friends, or we didn't hang out on the weekends or anything like that. We were Facebook friends, but we were veterans, right? And so he saw that I needed help, and he reached out to me. Um, and that's what really got me to where I'm at today. And that's why, I wanted to do this. I want to help other veterans. I want as many people around me um, that can help me help other veterans, right? But for me, that's not where I want to stop. Okay. We've got Todd Box on here. Todd is the only person that's not associated with the military in one form or another. But look at how all of this has affected him, right? I'm sure that Todd has family, friends, co-workers, classmates, you name it, that is affected the same types of ways that veterans are too, right? So how can we help individuals who aren't veterans? I mean, we don't want to keep these things to ourselves. We don't compartmentalize everything, put a little box and say, I'm only going to do this or I'm only going to do that. Why not help as many people as humanly possible? So that's where I'm at with it. That's my background. That's why I'm here. Between the military, the corrections, the working as a police officer, I've seen some stuff. As I've said in another video, I've been there. Right? I know what it's like. I understand it, and sometimes I'm still there. But all I really want to do is try to help people one way or another. And I want to thank everybody on here for being here today, being present, showing up, and trying to see what we can do to help others. So we went out of order a little bit because it looked like John was having some connectivity issues. So I'm going to go right back to him and let him continue on with what he was talking about.
Well, I apologize for the lighting. I had to step outside. My internet decided to crash. So, I guess living in the country, this is what you're going to deal with. So anyway, about 8 months after I left basic training, I got deployed out to the first Gulf War. Short war. And, I'm back home 18 hours after leaving, country. I had married somebody right before I left because what PFC doesn't, and went ahead and, I basically, I think I was home maybe not even 6-8 months, and started just I don't know. I wasn't feeling me. I wasn't me. I wasn't John before the Gulf War, and I ended up leaving my wife and pop back in now and then, that kind of stuff. We had gotten divorced, and because, well, that's kind of inevitable as well. But in that period of time, I had basically just kind of ran off the rails. I ended up in prison for a short period of time. Thankfully for me, it was in my home county, and I knew most of the deputies, so I was able to spend most of my corrections time in my county jail, which was quite a benefit, instead of having to go into prison, big boy prison. After I got out of there, the same stuff was happening. I didn't fall into the drug and alcohol thing as much as I fell into a rage thing. I had a tendency to go into bars, and it wasn't to drink. It was to find some poor sap on a bar stool and drag him off and just beat him into the ground. It made me feel better. I didn't really, I wasn't caring about the individuals at that point. I had probably the most horrific road rage you'd ever seen in your life. And, wasn't, when I would take, I had fathered 3 kids in that period of time. And I would, when we went somewhere, they were pretty much instructed to stay quiet because I couldn't contend with the noise and just I call it high vibration. Just couldn't deal with the high vibration that the kids were putting off while trying to drive, while trying to deal with other motorists. And, it would get me into such a rage that, I almost had to start feeling sorry for other drivers out there, because I was gonna be, off the hook. And I didn't feel like I gave my kids a chance in that period of time. And it wasn't until I turned about 35 years old. Mind you, I got out of the Army when I was 20. And at 35, I finally started getting a grip on me and what I was doing and what I was doing to my kids. And I really had no idea, honestly, at that point, I still had no idea what I was dealing with. And I ended up getting married in 2013. I married my high school sweetheart. We dated in junior high and high school and all that good stuff. She actually knew me before, the military. So, there was no trying to put up a front or anything. She already knew who I was. So, and she happened to be a police officer. So, which is why I never chased her down in the first place, because I knew where she was. And the last time I was there, I didn't like it. So I kind of avoided it. But shortly after we got married, she got a hold of me one day and just kind of sat me down and said, look, you've got to do something different than what you're doing. I wake up in the middle of the night, screaming, fighting. I always make the joke that I dig foxholes in my floor. And I'm quick. I'm an old fat guy, but I'm still quick. I can get out of bed 9 times out of 10 before she can get a hold of me. I've woke up underneath my Christmas tree a couple of times. I've scared the ever living life out of my kids. When they would have bad dreams and come in and climb in bed with me, and it would trigger me, and I'd end up flying out of bed. And, it was never, I never understood what was going on, what I was doing, what had happened. And, it took my wife sitting me down and actually saying, hey, we gotta do something. And I don't do pills. I've tried talk therapy, doesn't work. It's same with you, Joe, is it's same issue. You rehash things, and by the time you get back into another session, you're just now starting to get back to normal. And it didn't work for me. And, when we actually sat down and started talking to each other, and she's been my biggest supporter. I had to sit down with her and explain to her, what was up, going to football games, and, at the local high school here, every time they made a touchdown, I didn't know this when I went, but they launched fireworks. I wasn't prepared, and man, let me tell you what, that was an awful experience. My first year living here with her, we're 2 miles away from our local high school, and they have a fireworks display on 4th of July. And while I was ready for it, I wasn't ready for it. And, here I am in the living room, huddled up on the couch, and, and it wasn't good for her. And, so as we talked and as we discussed things and what I was feeling and what sets me off and what puts me in a bad space, and she actually does an amazing job at making sure that those things don't, or she tries to minimize, I won't say don't, but she tries to minimize any of that kind of, those triggers that may come up. And she's been real good with that. But, fast forward here, to present day, I went through 30 years of construction. I was driving trucks and I was an electrician and everything else. And, she finally got me to go in, and I ended up getting a disability rating, which confirmed that, combat related PTSD with major anxiety, episodes and major depressive disorder, I think is how it is written. And that once that was confirmed, we could start moving forward. And later ended up getting my record expunged finally. I carried that felony with me for 23 years to make sure that, I wasn't going to do anything dumb again. But, I got rid of that and kind of started getting my life back on track. And with her, with the diagnosis, with the expungement, it all put me into the position I'm in now, which I'm now the director of a veteran services program in Indianapolis, that I never would have got that job had I not come to grips with myself and come to grips with, my past and good and bad. And all those things, kind of have elevated it to the point now where, I'm a firm believer in peer support. Having the camaraderie that we missed, by getting out and then talking to people openly and honestly and explaining, what it is that we go through. I think that has been what has really been my saving grace. And I would ask her, she is in the living room, but I would ask her if she was out here with me, but I don't know that I've had a nightmare in probably about a month and a half, maybe a month. And that's a pretty long time for me to not have a nightmare. And that's one of those things that, she would have to tell me what yay or nay on that. But I believe, that it has been that long. And I think a lot of that is boiling down to the time I've been spending with, these peer support groups, and actually talking and having these conversations like we're having right now, and being honest about what it is that where we are, not what we are, but where we are. And I think that's been that's probably the what's really saving everything right now, and has gotten me back into a level playing field. But that's me.
Well, and we're glad that's you.
Thank you so much for sharing too. The power of vulnerability is so crazy how strong that is, to see like someone like you, like a strong man, like all of you talking, right? Strong women talking and just being vulnerable and open and honest is so not only healing for yourself while you're being vulnerable, but also healing for other people who are like seeing you and hearing your words and hearing your story, like knowing that they're not alone, and knowing that it's okay.
Todd, to tell you a story, Clayton and I had gone to a baseball game and not expecting it, fireworks went off. He hit the deck, about to crawl under those chairs, like, what the hell's going on? Was so embarrassed. We were walking back to the car, would not turn his back to the stadium, because initially in the military, it's you go forward to get your guys. You go forward, not walk away.
Right.
But he was so embarrassed because he hit the deck over fireworks. To somebody who is not aware of that everybody struggles, looks at that as what is wrong. And that's what has to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So I get the fireworks at high school. Fully get it.
Yeah, I'm completely different when it comes to fireworks. But there's a very, very fine line for me. I grew up loving fireworks. So I still love them as long as I know that it's going to happen. If I know it's going to happen, then it doesn't and it doesn't catch me off guard, then the way I deal with that is I pretend that it's incoming rounds that are helping me, right? Or that it's that airplane flying over, that A-10 Warthog, right? Or whatever other uh, airplane that was coming in to put some suppressive fire down for us, but I'm right there along with John, and I'm pretty sure that Josh and I have had that conversation too. That hey, fireworks, I better know about it. What I want to get into some of the misconceptions about PTSD, and it doesn't have to be like a huge thing, but I definitely want to throw out there kind of what everybody thinks about it. And for me, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, is the post traumatic stress disorder. Um, and I was actually talking to somebody this morning about the word disorder. And to me, it's always sounded like this bad thing. It's like, that we're damaged goods, or something along those lines. And I won't go into all the different synonyms for that. But I don't look at it like a disorder. I look at it as more of, this is how I react to things that are going on in my environment based on my experiences that I've been through. Um, and one thing I've learned over the past year, even more than I already knew, is that, just because you go through a negative experience, that doesn't mean that it was bad for you. Right. And what I mean by that, because I know that there might be somebody out there watching this that goes, what the heck is Joe talking about? For me, every negative experience while I'm going through it seems like the worst possible thing in the world. Like the world's gonna crash down on me. But after I get through it, I look back and I say, wow, I actually made it through that. And then as I move forward, there's been times where I look back and say, if I wouldn't have gone through, and then I pick something from the last 41 years of my life, if I wouldn't have gone through that, I probably would have reacted to this differently. There's stuff going on within my life in the last 60 days that had I not gone through all of that negative stuff beforehand, I'd be acting a complete fool right now. On top of the fact that had I not gone through the program, One Belief Away, that I've gone through, I wouldn't be as cool, calm, and collective as I am right now. I'd be sweating bullets and not really able to do what we're doing here, and I wouldn't want to talk about it at all. So now that I've gone there, let's go around the horn, and let's start with Lorraine this time. And what do you think? It doesn't have to be a major, long story or anything like that. It's however you want to do it. If you don't have something, that's fine. I just want to kind of get everybody's perspective on what you think some of the misconceptions are about PTSD.
I think it's a misconception of the difference between traumatized and something traumatic versus something that has truly triggered a lifelong event, a lifelong struggle. Sorry about the cat. But, I've had my struggles. I've had my things. Previous marriage, I'll be honest, was abusive. But like Joe said, it's made me who I am. And that to me is a different level, different circumstance than what Clayton did. I can heal. I've healed. He struggles with also the moral battle not just the mental, but the moral battle of it, right from wrong. And I think that is a very big stigma of, it's full PTSD or it's not. Struggle is struggle, period, in any way, shape, or form.
I agree with you 100%. I really do. Especially, you brought up the moral side of stuff. And, that we all want to be able to say that, we're definitely going to stand up and say, I'm not doing this because of that, because it's immoral or unethical or something like that. But, I've had some friends that have gone to places, not just military, but have gone places that, they necessarily didn't necessarily do kind of the right thing by a lot of people's perspective. And then, they get all bent out of shape about it, really, for lack of a better term, in my opinion. But at the same time, the one thing that I always try to tell people is, it may not have been the right thing to do at that point in time, in some people's perspective, but it got you through to the next day. And at least you can go back and you can back to tell yourself now, I probably messed that situation up. Right? It's not an excuse for it. It probably shouldn't have happened. But you can't relive that situation, and you don't always get to pick and choose exactly how you're going to handle something right at the very moment. Like I said, not making excuses for anything unlawful, illegal, immoral, or anything like that. It's just the simple fact of we all people that have to move on one way or another. And you have to admit to yourself that you did wrong, and then say, okay, how am I going to do it moving on from here? So no, I understand. And, I've had conversations with people about that type of stuff before, so I get it. So thank you, Lorraine. Who wants to go next?
I'll jump in. I'm going to go ahead and take a step back from PTSD specifically. I have not been diagnosed with PTSD, nor do I have a ton of education or experience, so I don't want to speak specifically on something I'm not 100% sure about. I will take a step back and say, a little bit more of a blanket of mental health and mental illness in general. There's so many misconceptions we could go on all night, but a few that really stick out to me is the fact that, not everybody has a mental illness, but everybody has mental health, and everybody can become mentally unhealthy. And people are so quick to say, oh no, I'm not crazy. I'm not this, I'm not that. It's like, slow down a little bit, relax. Everybody can become a little bit mentally unhealthy at times, and you're not being attacked. And I think that if we could, kind of the whole goal of what we're doing tonight, to fight that stigma and get rid of that stigma, I think it'd be a little bit better for people to be able to slow down and talk about it, and open up the door for people who do have the mental illnesses, a little bit more severe cases, to talk about it. And some of the other misconceptions that that drive me nuts are the fact that we are, crazy, or dangerous, or violent, just because we have this label on us. I've had previous bosses that have, I'm wide open. I'm very blunt. I don't beat around the bush. There's been days I've gone into work after my diagnosis, of course, where I'm trying to get a handle on things. And I've told my boss, like, hey, I'm a little off today. Bear with me. I might not be myself. And the immediate response is, oh, well, you're not going to freak out and kill everybody, are you? And it's like, are you kidding me? Or, or people joking around, when I'm in the midst of me having one of the, terrible day, people are joking around with me. Oh, does that mean you're two people? Are you going to be two different people today being bipolar? Haha. And it's just like, it just blows my mind the way that people can joke about that kind of stuff when it's something that is so detrimental and so pivotal in our lives. You know what I mean? I don't want to say obsessive. I don't want to say I'm obsessive, but I focus so much on trying to keep myself balanced and put so much energy into trying to keep myself balanced, and it's just a joke to you. And it's just, so those kind of misconceptions that I can personally speak on, just really infuriate me. I put so much energy and effort into this, and this thing that you think is a joke, or that you think that I can't, I might be having a little bit of an off day, but just because I try to be open and communicate and telling you I'm having an off day, now all of a sudden you think I'm about to be dangerous or violent. It just blows my mind the way that people can jump to that conclusion with having no education or experience on any of the matter.
Yeah, I can. I'd like to say I can understand, but I can't. And that's mainly because of the fact that I'm not the type of person who has been willing to tell people a lot of kind of what I've been through, or to say to somebody, hey, I'm having a bad day. I might be a little bit off today or anything like that. I've always been the type that kept it bottled up, because for me it was, as soon as I mentioned it, then I was letting on to a weakness, right? And
Yep.
so I never wanted to show that weakness.
Right.
And I'm sure you understand where I'm coming. I'm sure actually everybody on this panel understands what we're coming from, and and that's been the biggest thing for me, is that for starting this is, we're big tough military people. We're men, or we're bosses females. We're go-getters and everything. So I can't show any weakness whatsoever. But it comes right back to exactly what you were talking about, is because you are fearful, at least in my opinion. For me personally, I was fearful that I'd make fun of, right, or have somebody act the way that you described, right? Because the biggest problem for me is that I don't know how I'm going to react to some stuff. I used to bounce in a bar. And this goes, John was talking earlier about seeking out people to hurt whenever he worked at a bar, or he went to the bar. I think that me working as a bouncer, and that was not just to sometimes make extra money, right? But a lot of it was to be able to be given a reason to take out some of that aggression, some of that pain that I was feeling. So John and I would have been great people. He'd come in there and I'd be willing to fight him. It is what it is. John, I'm not doing that with you. Trust me. So, I had a person call me just a name that I cannot stand it. When I hear somebody called this name, I can't stand being called this name. It's a name that I picked up when I worked at in the prison system. And it has to do with being a female dog. I had an individual call me that, and before I knew it, we were going at it. And I had to have a couple people that grabbed me to get me off of him, and then they grabbed him and threw him out of the bar. But it was just one of those things that just made me snap. So that's why, I haven't been as vocal about myself, and then when I'm in bad moods and stuff like that, because I don't want someone to joke about it. And you're 100% right. It's not funny at all.
Yeah.
So, who wants to go next?
I'll go. So to caveat on that, also, like, as an infantryman for so long, there was a lot of like dark humor per se that we would kind of poke at, but at the same time as we weren't dealing with anything, right? So like when we were together, this kind of humor is, not acceptable really in like a civilian terms or whatnot. But knowing that, what I know now is we were all together in this situation, all struggling, all unwilling to admit that we were struggling, because we know as soon as we admitted that we were struggling, they would deem you unfit for duty and make you go through all kinds of hoops just to to get your situation back again. And when I'm thinking about like PTSD, you know, the invisible wound, and, you know, that doesn't take combat to have that. You know, it doesn't take going into a war zone to experience that. And our mind is so powerful that like we can literally worry ourselves sick or manifest anything that we want into our lives, whether it be good or negative. Whatever we focus on the most is what we bring about in our lives. And when I'm talking to especially the Vietnam guys, like who, you know, just carried this weight around and then came back to the States and was met with so much hate for what, you know, had happened, when a lot of them were drafted. You know, her dad was drafted to the Vietnam War, you know, by no choice of his own. But when I talk about these trauma points with these guys, if you imagine it is like you start off on this route with this rucksack, and the rucksack is empty at this point. The only thing that's in it is, you know, what you're prepared to take and put in it along this journey. And then you hit these trauma stuck points. And when you get to this trauma point, you find, you know, the difference between cover and concealment is, you know, whether it's going to protect you or stop these things. So we, in our minds, have this as a safety mechanism. So then would you pick up a leaf or would you pick up a rock to protect you from danger coming for you, right? So then you take this rock and you put it in your rucksack and you keep moving along. So you'll have it for the next time that something happens, as far as like a trauma point. And then you get to this next one and you're at a situation where you need another safety mechanism for you. What are you going to grab? A leaf or another rock? And then you just keep taking these rocks and you just keep putting them on your shoulders, and you keep wearing this mental and emotional struggle, just wearing it, weighing you down everywhere. And then when you finally get to like your main battle, like you're already wore down and beat up, and there's rocks there to protect you. So there's no reason to carry these ones all along on your journey. And we just carry these things with us everywhere we go. And it becomes part of us to the point that like that is the new us. And the truth is we have the power within. We just have to be willing to accept it, right? And know that when we get to that battle, we'll have the tools in place in order for us to be successful. We don't have to carry all this weight, all this heaviness of trauma. And, you know, explaining that is one thing, but getting someone to really understand that and accept it. And one of the main things that I do when I work with veterans is I make them say, like, I give myself permission to relax, or I give myself permission to be calm. And because really you are in control. And when you can take control, you step into your power. And then that's when the magic happens, per se, right? And you start really seeing life for what it is, not what you believe that it is. Yeah, what you perceive. So when it comes down to the understanding how individuals react to these traumas that happen in their lives, or how they, you know, overcome these things, what mechanisms they put in place to keep them safe, which then really is an undesired behavior because it's toxic to you, whether it's using some kind of substance to really haze it out and like make it blur away, or, you know, being in so much pain that you're seeking comfort through like a medication or something like that, right? And I believe when when we continue to spread the word and we continue to be vulnerable, especially in public, the ripple effect of the healing for that will go far beyond what we'll ever be able to understand ourselves. But it just keeps going and keeps going. And like Joe said earlier, I saw what he was putting out into the public, and I immediately knew what was going on in private. And that's when I called him. And we started going through this because I could see it, because I was seeing myself also.
Bethany, anything you want to add to that?
She's a
That's
smart
hard to
one.
follow.
She's a smart one. She's my glue.
Yeah, that was on point. I would just say that, I think that in general, society spends a lot of time focusing on our physical health. And if we could just, like we've talked about already, eliminate that stigma so that, we can really get to the bottom of our mental health issues. And, like you were saying, Lorraine, everybody has trauma in their life, whether it's little traumas or big traumas, right? We've all experienced something that has given us some sort of limiting belief in our life that isn't true, but we perceive it to be true. And so, being able to help people go within and focus on, what is at the core of those trauma points and those limiting beliefs, I think is really what's going to heal the whole world. It all starts with us. And so, yeah, mental health is just as important, in my opinion, if not more important than physical health. It all goes together.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree on that. Absolutely. Hey, John.
Yes, Huck.
What do you got?
Well, it's funny. I was just sitting there thinking about Todd over there. I kind of got the joking. Yeah, I of course we all did the dark humor wall in, and I followed dark humor for a long time. But I was thinking about, some of that, how people perceive you, with, I don't mind calling it a disorder. It is what it is. But, how people perceive you with PTSD and with anxiety and with depression and all that. Mine is on a more personal level. I haven't had a whole lot in the way of, just random folks at work or anything like that. But mine was my own mother. My mom and dad, they still believe I am 21 years old, which happens to be the year that how old I was when I went to prison. But they still believe I'm 21. I'm 51 years old now, and I have done everything in my life to try to make up for that moral injury, that I've kind of put on everybody. It's kind of a it's kind of a bad thing that your parents have to talk about at church on Sunday. That their son's locked up. That's a big deal to them, and it brings down your social status. And that almost brings in a little bit more trauma to you, because now you've got this problem with your family, so now you're missing out on some of that support system that you may have. And to this point right now, I think I talked to my mom, usually over text, because I'm deaf in one ear and it makes it a pain in the butt to talk on the phone usually. But I haven't spoken with my mom very much. My dad, I haven't talked to him directly since 2013, even though we worked together for 18 years. And we don't speak that much because, again, I'm still 21. My sister, my nieces, it's I'm kind of outcasted from the family a little bit. But I have my own family and I have my own kids, and I've got my support here that's close to me. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest issues that I've had. Is my PTSD has kind of caused um, more issues to happen, but at the same time, it has actually brought other people into my life that have replaced those people and actually been a huge support system. Even so much as guys that I ride with, these old Vietnam vets, those guys. Oh man, I can sit and talk to them for days on end. And part of our social club here in our county, we have a veteran social club every Friday, and I try to get out there about every other week. And most of it is Vietnam veterans, and they just want to sit and talk, man. And so I always kind of feel that that's been my replacement right there, is being able to talk to these old warriors, that have had to deal with way more than I ever will have had to deal with. And here they are on the other end of it. And, now they're passing on their information and some of their healing properties and how they have gotten through a lot of this stuff. And, I've got one in there that is currently going through anger management class. He's got the same rage issues that I had for years, and it's great to sit and talk with him and actually just go back and forth and, and kind of take that little bit of, just that little bit of pain away from him. And at the same time, he takes a little bit of it out of me, and every time we do this, it takes a little bit more out. And it's definitely emptying that bottle, and I'm really kind of, that's really my biggest issue is, I've gone from having a family support system to a not blood family support system, I guess is what I'm trying to get at.
Thank you, John. Greatly appreciate it. Let's switch gears a little bit, and I know myself and Lorraine have kind of talked about this a little bit with what we've done or been involved in to kind of help ourselves, help others. Let's start off with Todd. Todd, why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you've done, what you've been involved in, how you're trying to help change things and make things better for everybody.
Oops. Thank you. Sorry about that. Mainly right after I started to get a handle on my own situation, I went through a program and got certified to be a facilitator for a support group for NAMI. I do a men's mental health support group with them. That is, as much as it may help some of the men that come to that is a huge help to me as well. It's just a connectivity. And as we've touched on so many times tonight, just to help remind you over and over and over again, you're not alone. We're all in this together. At least all of us who are trying to talk about it, we're all in this together. And then just outside of that group, just advocating as far and wide as I can. Everybody that I know, as far as, out in Findlay at the gym, all of my clients that work with me, everybody, I'm always talking about it. Communication is key, whether it's good, bad, or in between. We have to talk about it, or else how are we going to know, what the next step is that we need to take.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Um, we're going to go with Bethany and Josh. Bethany, I'd like you to start off since you're the one that really kicked this whole thing off when it comes to me being involved, getting Clayton involved, and Lorraine involved, and Josh involved. So, I mean, why don't you take it?
Okay, well, so I talked a little bit earlier about how we got started in this holistic health journey, and it started for us like back in 2015. We started taking some supplements that really started making a difference in our lives, and it opened the door to, like I said, just this whole path of holistic healing and personal growth and development. And we've been on this huge journey of personal growth and development. And throughout the years, one of the things that Josh continued to struggle with, and I struggled with as his wife, was that he was smoking cigarettes still. And so we had this pact. See, when we met each other, we both smoked cigarettes. And so we made this agreement that we'd stop smoking cigarettes. And then he used this crazy excuse, like he was in a war zone and didn't want to stop smoking. And so I accepted that excuse for a long time, but then many years had passed, and I really wanted to see him let go of that. And so
also, I had promised her when our youngest was born that I was quitting smoking, and he just turned 12 this year. So
yeah, so it was a little overdue. So
yeah.
But for a long time, Josh really didn't want to quit smoking. And if you don't want to quit something, you're not going to quit something. So you have to want to quit. And he finally came to a point and he said, I really want to quit smoking and I want to figure this out. And so I had a friend of mine who her father had quit smoking after hypnosis. And I thought, well, what the heck, let's give it a try. And so I went to Google and I found somebody who had the best ratings, and I was like, all right, let's give it a try. And so entered Tim Sure into our lives. And
I still thought it was all voodoo at this point.
Yeah, we both kind of were like, all right, we'll give it a shot. What do you got to lose, right? And so, this was during the pandemic, and Tim said he was going to do all of these sessions with Josh over the phone. And I thought, over the phone, don't you need to have some energetic exchange in the room together?
Look into my eyes.
Yeah, I was like, over the phone. Okay. And so he had his first session to quit smoking with Tim, and it was the most amazing thing that I had ever personally experienced in my life. This man who had smoked for the last 20 years and was smoking basically a pack a day, just up and quit cold turkey after his first hypnosis session. And so for me, that was just like, wow, that's pretty magical. And so Josh continued to work with Tim. He had 2 sessions for the smoking cessation. And like I said, after the first session, he had quit smoking. And throughout those conversations with Tim, he had explained to us how, the power of hypnosis can help you alleviate some of these traumatic events in your life, to let go of some of those things that you have anchored down, and upgrade your beliefs, because this is all just a set of beliefs right now, right? And so we kind of mulled on it for a few months. We weren't quite sure that was really what was going on. Josh had been seeing a therapist with the VA and was supposed to start EMDR therapy right before the pandemic. And then the pandemic hit, and his therapist stopped seeing people literally the week that he was supposed to start his EMDR therapy. Yep. And so, we just thought, well, maybe this can kind of, work in place of that. And so, Lorraine, like you said, everybody has their own traumas, and I have my own traumas as well. And, I also have had abusive relationship in the past, and had just a lot of my own personal baggage that I needed to work through. And we were just at a point in our marriage where we just needed to work through these things individually yet together. And so we went through this program with Tim Schur, separately but simultaneously. And so Josh was working through his issues and traumas, and I was doing the same at the same time. And so it just like completely transformed our marriage. It transformed us as individuals, as people, the way we show up for ourselves, the way we show up for each other, the way we show up for our children, and just the way we show up for the world. And so, you know, after experiencing that, Josh was just like, I have to find a way to be able to pay this forward and get this back to veterans.
Yeah.
And so he started working with Tim, and Tim started mentoring him on, you know, teaching him his skills and how to better connect with veterans and how to be able to translate these skills and pass this on to other veterans to be able to help people. And, you know, like you said, Todd, it's not just veterans who deal with PTSD, and people have traumas of all sorts and all kinds, but, you know, and this group specifically, I think that it's really important for veterans to be able to come together and connect with each other. And like you said, John, just having somebody there with you who's, you know, going through the same things or has been on that same path and can relate to you and, you know, help you just understand that you're not alone and eliminate some of the shame that comes with mental health issues, whether it's PTSD or bipolar or whatever it may be. You know, there's a level of shame that is associated with that stigma, and being able to alleviate that shame from others and help people just know that they have within them whatever it takes to live their best life. And, you know, Josh, I think, says it best when he says that he wants to help veterans enjoy the freedoms that they sacrifice so much for, because right now a lot of veterans are just living in their own personal prison, their own mental hell that they're creating in their minds every single day. And, you know, whatever we can do to reach out and help people, if that's, you know, connecting with other spouses like Lorraine, and, you know, sometimes it takes being able to talk to the spouse to be able to get into the head.
I'm not sure I understand.
Oh, sorry, Siri didn't understand. Sorry.
She don't understand.
But yeah, you know, sometimes it's not just a straight path to the veteran. Sometimes you got to go in the back door and, you know, talk to somebody that they love. And, you know, I think that that's been a common theme here today. John, you mentioned the same thing, that, you know, your wife just had that kind of moment with you where it's like, hey, look, you know, we're going to have to come to a level of acceptance of what's going on here. And you have to be able to accept it before you can change it and move forward.
Well done.
One last thing I was going to say to John, you were talking about, you know, the situation that I felt like what you were saying is you're carrying a lot of shame with that stigma, and that shame transfers on to your family. And, you know, you feel that your family is carrying this burden, you know, because of your mental health situations. And I think that that is what a lot of us have felt and experienced in life. And eliminating that shame is so, so crucial and so important. And I don't know if you're familiar with Brene Brown, but she is really an amazing psychotherapist, researcher. She talks a lot about shame, and she's got a good book called Daring Greatly. She has another one called Atlas of the Heart, and she talks a lot about that. And I think that those are two books that every person with mental health struggles, be it a veteran or not, should put those in their library.
Sweet. Josh, you got anything you want to add on there, or did she check all the boxes?
I'll tell you what, she has been checking all the boxes for a long time. And honestly, like, I owe it all to this woman and the life that we are building together. You know, we came into our relationships both with having trauma, you know, from the past, and together, like, we have just become this force of just healing and love, and it's amazing how I spent 21 years teaching guys how to find and fix bad guys, and I was really so effective and so efficient at doing that. But when it comes to the aftermath of healing from that, my only answer is go to the VA. Go to the VA. And what does the VA do? Is they put you into a level of fuzziness so that you're normal per se after dealing with these traumas of this. And what we're able to do with the hypnosis and what we're able to do with those holistic modalities that we use every day is continuing to strengthen what we're doing. And, you know, with her by my side, you guys, all of us together, like, we're untouchable. Like, we're unbeatable. Like, we'll continue to kick this thing in the freaking teeth and keep moving forward. 22 veterans committing suicide every day is only a statistic on veterans, right? There's still so many people who just deal with trauma that choose a permanent decision for a temporary problem. And, you know, by us being together, bringing awareness, being vulnerable, knowing that everything that everyone on this panel has dealt with or is dealing with, like, there are others out there who are in the dark, right? Who are just blindly moving through life, hoping to make it to the next minute. And
they're just waiting for your lights.
Yeah. So we're going to shine bright. Bright like a diamond. Woo!
Shine bright like a diamond. I don't have that good a tune, though.
It was great. I like it.
All right, John, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing?
Well, as far as what I do, like I said, mine has been peer support. I lean a lot on peer support, dealing with. I'm on the board with Indy Vet to Vet, downtown Indianapolis. I'm on the board of Mental Health of America here in Hendricks County for their veteran suicide prevention coalition. And then, you know, those two things really have been a huge part. I didn't know about them until I got my job. I had no idea these things even existed. I knew nothing when it came to veteran services, or, you know, I knew about the VA, but I heard every horror story there was prior to ever even signing up for VA healthcare. And yeah, I signed up for it, but yeah, it's about as far as I go. I still have private insurance through my company because, man, I ain't dealing with that. And not to knock them, they've been great every time I have been, but I understand the level of service that I'm going to get when it comes to mental health, and it's going to be a pill, and then it's going to be another pill to counteract the side effects of that pill, and then on down the road. And I don't like pills to begin with, so you know, so I don't want to go that route. So I have always kind of looked at, you know, between leaning on my wife and you know, I don't want to say leaning on my kids, but just having my kids around, you know, my grandkids around, that kind of stuff has been really huge in changing my direction as far as, you know, any kind of mental health issues that I have. But again, it is that open and honest conversation with your spouse or with your friend or whomever it is that is with you, you know, that is your number one. That open and honest conversation, and just being, you know, being the one to say, hey, look, you know, I'm not right today. today is just not my day. That has been, when I come in, I may text with my wife, throughout the day. And there may not be any indication that anything is wrong. It's just me texting with her like I normally do. But when I come home and I'm walk in that door, it's amazing how quickly she can pick up that, hey, something ain't right. And she may not question me on it. She just ask me if I'm all right, and if I say no, then she'll figure out what she's got to do to help. And that's the way she is anyway. She's just a helper. But I think that just having conversations in general, and stopping the tough guy attitude, I think that really has been the biggest portion of this. Sitting down and just being honest with people and honest with yourself. But I know that sounds cliche as hell, but just being honest with yourself, being honest with your family, and being honest with your friends. Remove the negativity, those negative friends out of your circle. I tell my kids 100 times a day, I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. I want those 4 close friends than 100 acquaintances, because those close ones are the ones that are going to help you. And they're the ones that are going to see those issues popping up, and being able to, maybe guide you a little bit better than those 100 pennies ever would. But that's kind of what I do. I mean, it's all about it's for me. It's just been peer support and just leaning on my wife as my rock, and using her and I together, because I'm sure she has just as bad as PTSD as me. She's been a cop for 27 years, man. And like I've always told her, I only did it for 3 years of my life. You've done it for 27, and only 8 months of mine was in combat. 27 of hers has been in combat. So I know she's in just as bad a shape as I am, and we work through it all together. It's weird that broken can fix broken sometimes, but we do it.
So, John, while I've got you locked in, I'm going to throw up a banner, at least attempt to. And why don't you tell us just really quick, kind of what you're doing with the homeless population. And I know that you've already brought up some of the other things you're involved in. So I'm going to try to throw up this banner, and that way people will have a way to get a hold of you.
Hey, there's the banner. Yeah. So I am the director of veteran services for Easter Seals Crossroads in Indianapolis. We work on a federal grant called the Homeless Veteran Reintegration Program, or HVRP for short. So basically what we do is we assist homeless veterans and try to get them into employment. That's our number one goal is employment. But aside from that, the wraparound is what we really focus on. We do make sure that everybody is connected into VA services. The scary statistic that of the 22 a day that we deal with on a daily basis, 60% of them are not connected to VA healthcare. And if we can at least do one little thing by connecting them into VA healthcare, then that's what we do. We connect them into their veteran service officers and try to grasp any disability benefits that they may have earned. Some of them don't even realize that they have that ability. And one of the bigger things that we do is I do go into the prison system throughout the state of Indiana and actually talk with the veterans in there, even if I can never help them because they're never going to get out. I still go in and talk to them because, they still are veterans and they still need to know that somebody out there's other veterans that want to talk with them. Not to throw a bunch of numbers out there, but the United States Army makes up 47% of the fighting force of the United States military. 52% of the population in the military, in the prison system, is Army. And of that, they're mostly considered violent or sex offenders. So, when they have done tests and TBI tests and PTSD assessments on prisoners, it comes out to something like 97% of the inmates in prison that are veterans have a TBI or PTSD issues. So that is why I go in there. But that's what I do. I work with homeless veterans on a daily basis. We work with 100 a year. We try to get 61 of them employed, and then we deal with thousands more in stand down events and everything else. So yeah, that's what I do daily.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to be here. I greatly appreciate it. Todd, what
Yes.
if you could give somebody one piece of advice, or maybe a couple pieces of advice, but definitely one piece of advice that could help them deal with whatever it is they're going through, and how you could help them, what would it be?
One piece of advice here.
Or two. You can give two at
Or
least.
Two. Just keep climbing. I don't know. What's up, John? Or three? Okay, I gotcha. Or three. Just keep climbing. Like I say, a lot of my preaching is done over my social media. And a lot of my interaction over my social media is all just keep climbing, keep climbing, keep climbing. No matter what, even if we're halfway up that wall, we're doing well for a couple of days, and our hands happen to slip off those rocks, and our rocks are tumbling down on our head, and it seems like we can't get back up. Just keep climbing, because that view from the top of the mountain, but when you finally get there, is worth it. It's just one foot in front of the other, man.
And you're out of where?
I am out of Northwest Ohio. Mainly, I operate with my therapeutic movement and my MMA training in Findlay, Ohio. The NAMI men's group is totally virtual. You can find information about that on my social media or the NAMI Wood County website as well.
What is the best way to get a hold of you besides your email?
Just social media, either Todd Box on Facebook or Instagram. You'll see me doing some goofy kind of MMA flex pose or something, probably.
Do you have a special handle for your Instagram?
Yes, all lowercase, Todd.box. Then the numbers 34. TODD.BOX.34.
1X or 2Xs?
1X.
1X.
2
My
Ds,
bad.
1X. You're good. Just like a cardboard box.
Got 34?
Yes.
Sweet. I'll throw that up there.
Perfect.
That way everybody can see it for a little bit. Todd, I know that you're kind of out of your element as far as the PTSD and the veteran stuff and everything. But whenever I decided that I wanted to throw this thing together, you were one of the first people that I thought of, just because of the fact that I knew a little bit about your story, not a lot, not nearly as much as what you've shared tonight. So I wanted to make sure that I got you involved in something like this, and hopefully we can do something further on down the road when we'll see where this goes. So thank you very much.
Of course, thank you for having me, and I'm always open to collaboration with anybody, any organization who wants to get together and yell and scream as loud as they can with me to let everybody know. We'll get through it.
There we go. All right, Josh. Same thing that John did, and then go on, give us a little bit more about how what you think you can do for people and all that fun stuff.
So definitely working with veterans every day. I have been also working with more civilians, quote, here recently too, and coming across the same things, different story, different events, but what is the same is how we react, how we deal with the trauma as far as like a coping afterwards, right? And then that shows up in other things that happen. Well, this just happened, so this is how I should show up because that's how my trauma response reacts, right? So every day I'm taking these veterans through these experiences, these hypnotic experiences that allow them to step into their power. And the three things that I tell them to focus on at all times is their physiology, their focus, and their language. And essentially what that means is like when you see yourself in a disempowered situation, or you're feeling full of anxiety or shame or guilt or whatever you want to label it as, right? Whatever word you have to it that is causing you this emotion, how is your body? Your shoulders are probably forward, your head is probably down, right? What is your focus? What are you seeing on the screen of your mind at this moment when you're feeling full of this shame or this, anxiety or this guilt or whatever it may be? Like, what are you seeing? The image is probably either like a still image or, a black and white movie that would be, pretty much not wanting to be right in front of us because we're trying to shift away because we're feeling not powerful at the moment. And then what is the language that we're speaking in our mind? And, that's probably saying like, why me, or why is this? And really all that does is cause you to blame something. And normally what you blame is yourself. So when I'm talking with people that are dealing with this, I'm essentially just creating awareness for them. So in the same aspects, like, what does your body look like when you're feeling confident, right? When you're feeling powerful, like your shoulders are probably back, your head's probably up, right? You're smiling, right? What's the focus? What is on the screen of your mind? It's probably success or love or happiness, because you're feeling that empowered. And then what is the language that you're speaking to yourself? And they're all probably power questions, because you're like, yeah, this is going to be great, or woo, I can see that. So when I bring awareness to them and you get in that situation where you're feeling disempowered, you're feeling full of like a self-limiting belief, we form that switch. We turn that switch on in our mind. We immediately adjust our posture, we change our focus, and we change our language that's in our mind. And there have been a lot of, well, not a lot, but the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your thoughts. But the quality of your thinking is determined by the questions that you are asking and answering in your mind all day long. So when I teach people this one little switch, this little trick to like shift themselves, it is so powerful when they apply it in those situations. And it requires, a level of training, right? It requires a level of you doing it and being aware of it. But whenever I can get people to become aware of that, then it changes their whole outlook on life because of these three simple little things. So yeah, I know my situation changed a little bit. It's not joshkemp.com anymore. We changed it to Subconscious Solutions, because that's more based on, that's not me, because you are the one who is powerful. And I'm just like a guide per se, because I've been there. I wore those boots. I bled that. I sweat that. I cried that, right? I lost that. And being able to come out on the other end and being a healer, right? So it is.
Did I get that right?
The solutions is actually soul.
I knew it.
SOL.
I knew it.
Yeah. It's all good. It's all good. The joshkemp.com will take you right there to the
they'll
same
redirect
spot.
you.
But like it's about empowering. And when you heal in your soul, everything else just kind of falls right into place. Like we've said, when you are open and honest with yourself and the people around you who love you the most, because those are the ones who see those blind spots that you can't see, that you have tricked yourself and convinced yourself over such a long period of time that it's not really a thing or a problem. And then you have someone like one of your quarters, right, who is like, look, like you're jacked up right now. Like we gotta fix this. And you know, some of those hard conversations, you know, especially some of the hard conversations we've had together are not easy, but they are necessary, especially in this healing process. And yeah, my advice and what I can do is just continuing to create that awareness. And when you are aware and when you know, you can't like unknow it. So woohoo, right?
Woohoo!
That's right. Bring that. We bring the power. And whenever you do something silly or you know mask it in a way, then it kind of takes away its power from you. So like just continuing to be aware, especially of like how you are holding your body, what you are seeing in the screen of your mind, and what you are saying to yourself every single day is I think the most important part of it.
I can't agree with you any more than I already do. So powerful.
Yeah. Well, you are an
and-
amazing man, Joe, and the ripple effect of what you're doing is, like I said, probably never going to be able to see it, but it just keeps going and going and going. So hell yeah.
Well, that's the goal. Bethany or Lorraine, do you guys have anything you want to add to the end of this?
Thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and support you guys and support this movement in any way that I can. So yeah.
Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it. Loved hearing everybody's story and just being able to talk about it, open up. And, you know, Clayton here behind me, who is not a camera person, has stuck his head in a few times. You
We can
know,
see you, Clayton.
Josh, he says you guys speak the same language. And Huckleberry, you'll understand. He's over here telling me everybody's a MFer.
Yeah.
So
yes, every single person on this thread right now is especially that. And
that's
I know
what he's
that,
saying. He's like, Mama, that's what they are. So
yep.
Thank you, because you guys are opening him up to not being the only one, to experiences and to talk. So from the spouse, thank you.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why we're doing this. Todd or John, you got anything you want to add?
Nope. Just thank you for having me. Hopefully somebody will take something that I had to say as useful. And thank each and every one of you guys. I have my little notepad here. I took little notes down from each of you guys, so I hope that's okay. I keep it all personal, of course, but thank each and every one of you guys for sharing as well. I appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I appreciate being on here as well. I really do. Todd, thanks for your story. And that was, that strikes home, man. That I appreciate you.
No problem.
Thank you, everybody, for sharing your stories.
Absolutely. I wouldn't have been able to do this without people like you in my life. So I greatly appreciate it. We haven't, talked or discussed about how often we're going to do this, how much, for how long, or anything like that. We went for 2 hours tonight. So thank you so much for all of you for sticking with us for 2 hours. Hopefully somebody viewing this, it resonates with them.
It will.
They understand that, they're not alone, that there are people out there going through the same exact stuff. Maybe not to be 100% on point with exactly what it is, but at least some portion of it. And, they reach out. If anybody wants to reach out to me directly because they weren't able to see somebody's banner or something, get in touch with somebody else on here, by all means do so. My email is down there at the bottom of the screen, and I will direct you to anybody else that needs to be done. And if you guys have anybody that you want to direct to somebody, by all means, let me know, and we'll get everybody linked up and go that route. And just trying to come together and help everybody.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. Everybody have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
It's going to keep getting bigger and bigger too. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. Everybody here
Absolutely.
is doing their part, making a difference.
Yeah. Everyone on this call is a healer, is a kind, compassionate hearted, regardless of what we've been through in our past, because normally the best healers are the ones who have experienced the hardest fights, I guess you could say. So kudos to all of you guys. Thank you. Thank you for
all.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.